We're two brothers and sisters. Welcome back to Haiku. I do. And you know it's about good hip hop music, man. Now, today I'm gonna do my first album review, and I'm reviewing a project by Zoocci called Anxiety Plus, and he dropped it in February this year. So I've been giving this project a couple of spins, and I feel like it's the right project for me to review first because it sets a very good benchmark of what it is that I look for in a hip hop project. So I'm only going to look at three things from the album, which is the content, the production, and the replay value. And then I'm going to measure each in a scale of 1 to 10. So I'm only going to do three because I don't want it to be like a long review. And then at the end, I'm going to ask two questions that I feel like every hip hop artist needs to ask themselves when they're working on a project. The first question is, does it have a concept? Right? So if it doesn't have a concept, then I think it's better, an artist calls it a mixtape or an EP, because then you're just putting together like a bunch of random songs. But if it's an album, it needs to have a concept. So that's the first question. The second question is, does the music live up to the concept? Because it's one thing to title your album The Messiah, but if you're not bringing in those fire bars and the metaphors, the punchlines that are heavenly, for us to worship, then for me it's an L. No matter how good the music is, if it doesn't live up to the concept of the album, for me it's definitely a miss. So yeah, without wasting any more time, let's get straight into this review. Now, when it comes to the content of the album, I want to look at the features first. So on a song called Lift Me Up, Zoocci features Blackie and Nasty C. And the whole concept of the song is about when you've managed to rise through things that you were dealing with in your life and you finally like in a space where you basically feel lifted. So, if you look at Blackie, at the moment, I think he won about 10 plaques, in this past year alone. So he's definitely in an elevated space right now. And you look at Nasty C as well, who's currently doing a South African tour, with that other guy, T.I.'s son. And yeah, so if you look at both artists, they're basically in a space in their lives where they've basically have been lifted, right? They were once broke, now they've got money. Zoocci as well, he was dealing with a lot of anxiety and he's now managed to rise above it. So the whole concept of that song and those features, if you were to put two people on a song titled Lift Me Up, it definitely has to be Nasty and Blackie. So definitely original on that song. Another song called Plus, Zoocci features Lady Zama, and it's basically a song about when you've been through a lot of heartbreak, a lot of challenges. And what's interesting about Lady Zama is she's also spoken publicly about dealing with depression and with all the things that were said about her in the public space. So on a song like Plus, which the plus refers to like the medical sign, that feature actually makes sense and it's also original because she basically fits into the mood of the song. And they also have Mas Baby on that song as well, who's a brilliant vocalist. But I feel like I wanted to hear more from just Zoocci and Lady Zama on this particular track. Even though Mas Baby has good vocals, but I feel like in terms of the subject matter, they're talking about their past heartbreaks and things that they've been through, and he comes through there talking about hoes that he was sleeping with on the low. So I kind of feel like I'm not mad that he's on the song, but I just would have preferred if it was just Zoocci and Lady Zama and hear more from their perspective in terms of the stuff that they were dealing with. And on the last song called Il Prelude, Zoocci features Stogie T and Tellerman. And Stogie, Stogie's just being Stogie on the song. He just does what he does best. And what's interesting about Tellerman is that how he came through on the song, I totally wasn't expecting it. Like, he basically made the song. Like, Tellerman, the way he killed the chorus and the hook, it's insane. If he gives out 2 or 3 more features sounding like this, Tellerman in 2022 will definitely be what Bello Salo was in 2021 when it comes to hip hop. So definitely Tellerman killed it on that song as well. So that's one part of the content. The other part is if you look at the bars and the lyricism, right? Now, Zoocci is not a very lyrical MC, right? His wordplay, the bars, he's not very slick with it, and his storytelling is also not very elaborate. So he doesn't really go deep when it comes to concepts in terms of his pen game, right? He knows how to paint vivid pictures when it comes to his music, like sonically, but when it comes to that wordplay, those punchlines, those double entendres, and going really deep with his storytelling, that's definitely not Zoocci. But one thing you can appreciate is that he's very honest when it comes to his music. Everything that he speaks about is everything that is going through, and you definitely can't fault a guy for being honest. Especially in a genre of music where everyone is basically capping, you really have to appreciate Zoocci really putting his heart out and speaking about things that are really happening in his life. So initially I wanted to give this album 5 out of 10 when it comes to the content, but due to that verse that Stogie gave on that song Il Prelude, the bars, man, he's just basically, I think that's my favorite verse when it comes to this year. That verse from Stogie is definitely lyrical. So thanks to that verse, I'll have to give the content 6 out of 10. Now, when coming to the production on the album, Zoocci worked with Big Les for Real on a lot of songs, and I think that was very smart because a lot of people have actually accused Zoocci of having beats and production that actually sounds the same. Right? Now, I don't think it sounds the same. I think it's a signature sound. Like every big producer has a signature sound. So what Zoocci did by partnering with Big Les is that he was able to add a different texture to the feel on the album, so that the whole project doesn't kind of sound like monotonous in a way. And also on the song Lift Me Up, Nasty C did a co-production on that song as well, in order to basically make it a bit more upbeat. When initially Zoocci sent the beat for Nasty C to put his verse, he felt like he needed to up the tempo on the song, so he did a bit of co-production on that as well. And what that managed to do is that it gave the whole project a versatility when it comes to the sound, so that every song doesn't sound the same, basically, with regards to the production, but also to make sure that the production doesn't move too far away from the concept of the album, which is about anxiety, right? Because if you have an album about anxiety, you can't have beat productions with like crazy 808s and beats that are like club type of feel. Like everything has to be in tune with the concept of the album, which is basically anxiety. So when it comes to that production, and when it comes to the mixing, the mastering, everything is just top shelf. It's anything that you basically expect from Zoocci Code Dope. The quality, everything sounds clean, it sounds very crisp. So yeah, when it comes to the production overall, I definitely give it a 10 out of 10. Now, when it comes to the replay value of the album, I think if you appreciate the concept of the album, then you definitely won't find it sonically tiring, right? Because it's got 7 tracks, which is short, but because most songs are like 5 to 6 minutes long, it's actually not a very short listen, but it's also not too long either. So it kind of sits on the right sweet spot there between being able to play it and play it again, right? Because it doesn't sound too long, but it's also not too short. And another thing about the sequencing also is that Zoocci was very clever in how he basically arranged the track listing. So from the first track, which is Overture, and it's an introduction to the whole play, how he arranges every song there, it's like sonically the album is on an upward trajectory, right? So it doesn't get boring as you listen to it. The more you listen to getting into the album, the more interesting it actually sounds, and by the time you get to the last song, it's kind of like you're left wanting more, because he's arranged the track list in such a way that each and every song leads you to the next one, right? The next leads you to the next. So no song sounds like exactly the other song. Each and every song basically has earned its place on the playlist, all 7 songs. And the last one, which is called Il Prelude, is actually a precursor to an album that Zoocci is going to drop called, I think, Illumination or Illuminated or something. So what that does is, by having that song being the last one on the album, it's like by the time you get to the last song, you kind of like wanting more and looking forward to, the coming album which he plans to drop. I'm not sure exactly when he's planning to drop that project. So when it comes to the sequencing and the replay value of the project, definitely deserves a 10 out of 10 for me. Now, for the two most important questions: does the album have a concept? Yes, it definitely has a concept. The previous album was called Anxiety, and on the album cover, you could see Zoocci amongst other Zooccis. So he was basically beside himself with anxiety, right? Now, in this particular album, which is Anxiety Plus, on the album cover, you can see him actually rising above all the other Zooccis, which is the anxiety that he was basically dealing with, which adds to the whole plus thing, to say the album is Anxiety Plus, because plus is a medical sign. So it symbolizes the healing process of him trying to deal with his anxiety. And yeah, you can definitely tell, I mean, from songs like, Lift Me Up, on the project, where he's basically talking about how he's now in a much better space. He's now more accomplished. Everyone recognizes Zoocci. They know what he's basically about. Songs like Plus, where he features Lady Zama, where he was basically talking about, his past experiences and acknowledging everything that basically triggered the anxiety that he was basically going through. You've got songs like Drugs, where he talks about being medicated, right? Smoking weed, drinking lean, and having that as some kind of a coping mechanism to help him deal with the anxiety that he was going through. Toxic, where he's talking his shit, basically, saying that, other rappers' booking fees are like his rider. So he sounds a lot more confident now, right, in what he does and his love for the music. And yeah, basically the last song, which is Il Prelude, which is basically a precursor to the album that's about to come. So there's definitely a whole concept around this music, right? Now, the second question is, does he actually live up to the concept? Does the music live up to the concept? Absolutely, it does. When you look at the production, how he was able to put together, the track listing, everything ties up to the initial concept that he basically set out for the project. So yeah, that's definitely a win in my books. So yeah, man, I think that's the end of my review of Zoocci Dope's album called Anxiety Plus. And yeah, I really hope that you guys enjoyed this review. And remember, take care of your mental, and peace, love, and I'm out.